Hello, I'm Andrew Tsao. In this episode of Backstory, we're going to see a trailer for This Is Ours, a film that is full of uncomfortable truths and questions for the soul. It's an honest, heartfelt, and emotionally charged film about life, liberties, and the complexities of married life. With us now is the husband and wife writing and directing team behind the film, Kris and Lindy Boustedt. Thanks for being here, Kris.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks
Lindy,
for having us.
great to see you again. We had you on before with your wonderful film, Perfect 10. So it's good to have you back.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not giving too much away by quoting this, but in the film, we're going to hear a character say that that's the remarkable things about human beings is we're adaptable. Mm-hmm. You're a husband and wife writing and directing team. We met before when you did Perfect 10. What adaptations have you made coming to now This Is Ours as a working team?
Well, we've learned a lot about how to work.
Such as?
Well, one thing that's interesting about This Is Ours is when we wrote it, we originally wrote it as a much bigger film.
Really?
We wrote it where we were like, okay, we did Perfect 10. We're gonna go big, this next time. So we wrote it with a lot more characters. We were gonna cast it out of LA. We were gonna do a bigger budget.
Yeah.
And that kind of all fell apart in a not so fun way.
3 weeks before production.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we get to adaptability.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we took a weekend, we cried a lot, we drank a lot of wine, but we decided we wanted to make this no matter what.
Yeah.
So we went back to the writing room, we rewrote the script, took out a lot of characters, cut about 30 pages, and tried to look at it. It was like, okay, if we just had to do this, we know how to make a feature, so let's just do it again, but this time better. And so we rewrote it with that in mind of paring down the locations, making it so that it could exist on a smaller budget. So that was the first big adaptation.
Yeah, and just, finding the core of the story. It was actually really fun to rediscover some things that had sort of gotten buried in the largeness of the previous iteration of the script, but just really laser focusing on that was actually really rewarding. So I think it's actually a better movie, even though it is a better, 1/10 the budget we were.
Sometimes those limitations bring out the creative in us that we don't really realize. And so you mentioned paring down, and you mentioned getting rid of some of the locations, and our viewers are going to see a film that takes place essentially in one location, and in a sense the location is a character in and of itself, in that it is essential to the story and to the relationships in the film. Can you tell us a little bit about how this location came to be and how much of the location itself shaped the storytelling?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, so when we written the original version, we had found, I just started doing some searching in the Leavenworth area of vacation homes that we could rent.
Yeah.
And we really liked the idea of taking all the trappings of suburbia that a lot of people do and then putting it out in their supposed vacation area. So
so you have the homes close together. You've got
they're on a golf course.
Mansions, you're on a golf course,
right? And all the comforts of home are also in the vacation home.
Exactly. Yeah. So we really liked that idea that this was what a lot of America thought as vacation.
Escaping to the same.
Yeah. So we found this place pretty early on, and it's a couple in Mukilteo, and they actually. They rebuilt that house. They took, it was a log cabin that existed somewhere else. They bought it, they dismantled it.
Oh, really?
Took it out, bought a piece of land out here and rebuilt it. When it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so I like that it had this rustic look, but also was it was right on a golf course. And so we had it very early on. So we wrote the script around knowing that it was going to be a character.
You were going to be taking the crew and the cast to there.
Exactly.
Did you stay in the home?
Yes. We all lived in that home.
All of you, the crew, the cast?
So the whole crew and cast is 15 total, including us.
Yeah.
The bedroom that you see the husband and wife stayed, the girls stayed in there. There was a bunk bedroom that the boys stayed in, and then all the crew were downstairs in a basement that you don't see really.
And we stayed in the RV.
And we stayed in the
also
RV.
in the film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
RVs get very, very hot, by the way.
And this one does not have air conditioning.
Because it was an old RV, then we couldn't get the generator wouldn't function properly. There was no working bathroom, so it wasn't like a nice RV. It was just
It's a 1991 Jamboree, and it did quite well.
Yeah.
So in Perfect 10, you made a film that was very accessible, but at the same time pointed a light on stereotypes and perhaps maybe commercial images, particularly in that film of women, that we live with every day. So here now with your new story, you also kind of step outside of what we would consider the marriage film. You're dealing with a time and a place in a marriage. You're looking at a place that usually we don't see, and you actually unblinkingly go through all of it, all the way to its conclusion, which we won't tell them what it is. And so can you guys just talk a little bit about your sense of story and the themes that interest you, and what is it that for you guys as filmmakers is so attractive about sort of stretching that genre, that mold a little bit?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was really interested in when we were doing the writing process was just the idea of choices and how they reverberate through our lives. So just the idea that, it's actually something that was cut out of the film, but the idea that, when you're little, you make a choice like to take the test to be in the gifted program, and then that determines where you get to go to high school, and then how you do in high school determines where you go to, and like all these things how is an 8-year-old supposed to make choices that have ramifications to when they're 30, 40? And when you're married, the idea of, do we buy a house? Do we have kids? Like, what kind of careers are we choosing? All of that stuff has these far-reaching consequences. And there were definitely films that deal with this, like Run Lola Run, I suppose, would be the most obvious example. But I really got attached to that idea of, seeing yourself in the future and wondering how could you have changed where you ended up.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, and also, one thing for us that's really, we like to have raw honesty any place that we can, and we've been, not married not as long as our characters have in the film, but it seems like a lot of marriage films, like when the marriage is ending, that it's one specific event that causes it to happen. Yeah. Those of us that have been in long-term relationships,
it's not.
It's a little
it's an accumulation of these small
death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right.
Exactly. So we wanted to show that it was nothing, one thing per se. It was just this dread that it kind of, both these people
in almost inevitable sense, but you can't quite you can't say because of this.
Yeah. It's not that somebody had an affair and that's why they're upset. It's just that
they're unhappy and they don't know why they're unhappy. I think we too quickly sometimes, especially as a society who 50% divorce rate or higher, that it's just going to be this, I just need to get out of it and that's going to make me happy. And we wanted to really explore that. Is that really? Yeah. We always think the grass is greener on the other side, but that's because someone else is mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
And that's where we wanted to show is that there are cracks in every facade. So even if we have these characters that come in, or the free living. They live in an RV. They do whatever they want. They don't even have jobs tying them down. But there's cracks in that facade too.
Yeah.
And so we
really
wanted
look ideal from the outside, but once you get into it, you realize it's the problems you're dealing with are pretty universal here in terms of relationship. Now, speaking of relationship, what is the working system on the set? I mean, I understand we just talked a little bit about how you got together and reworked the script together. Now you go into production. What's it like working as a husband and wife team on the set creatively? You have actors' notes, you have script notes, you have to take moments and think about it. How do you work together?
Well, very carefully, and we don't recommend it for every married couple, definitely. But we've developed, in pre-production, in the writing phase, we're kind of back and forth. It'll depend who takes the first draft.
Yeah. Okay. Some people will think that we sit in a room and hash out the scripts together, but no. It's like
I'll stay married.
Yeah, I'll write a complete draft and hand it over. She'll do a rewrite, hand it back to me, and we just ping pong that back and forth, 20, 30 times until we end up with something that is making sense to us. Yeah.
And then in pre-production, I tend to have more of a producer brain, so I tend to take a little bit more of the lead in pre-production. But we're definitely working together, and we make sure that we're always on the same page. Yeah. And then when we get on set, Kris tends to have a little bit more of a mechanical thinking side of his brain, and so he'll speak, the director of photography speak, and the gaffing speak, and that sort of thing. So he tends to deal with that side a little bit more. Of course, we all work together. And then I tend to be, when I'm directing, I tend to be more intuitive and go with more of my emotions. So I work with the actors a little bit more closely.
Do the actors and the crew understand this instinctively? Like, if I have a question as an actor or a crew person, do I know who to go to?
Oh,
How do they figure
anybody
that out?
can go to either one of us.
Okay.
They know that they only have to go to one of us.
Okay.
And they
don't have to double check.
No,
absolutely no.
And in fact, there have been circumstances where something has come up that we hadn't talked about previously.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, like if somebody came to us wondering should we do X, Y, or Z, we'll just go to the other person real quick and get on the same page about it then, but
sometimes when we cut a take, we'll say, just a second, we just need to confer, and
you
we'll
guys
just,
will
we'll
go
just
off,
go,
step
we'll
off and
confer,
talk a little
and then
bit.
one of us will go and talk to them. We don't like to,
Yeah,
we
you
try
don't
not
approach
to,
as
exactly, we try not to have like a ton
good
of
cop, bad
people coming.
cop.
Absolutely.
You know, she
Absolutely.
really liked it, but for me, right, that could get really,
No,
really,
that would be frustrating.
really
But there is,
weird.
I mean, you know, we've been to, actually yesterday we celebrated being together for 12 years.
Wow.
Well, celebrated. We looked at the calendar and we're like, oh, we've been together for 12 years. But
I think you have to take her out to dinner, Kris.
Well,
I think that's what
It
happens.
wasn't our wedding anniversary.
Okay,
It was
okay,
just, you know.
Just a dating
Okay,
anniversary.
okay.
But there's definitely an emotional and logistical shorthand that comes with it that oftentimes, like, we just finished directing a short film together, and there were moments where I would just, from behind camera, go approach the actors and give them a note and come back.
Yeah.
But it was what we were both feeling, and
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
sort of knew it, even though we never talked about it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's never perfect, but
Yeah.
everyone knows that, and it's the same as any producer director team
Yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah,
set.
yeah.
We're just combine, you know what I mean? We're
Right.
just doing it in a little different way. So, and it's ever changing, and different actors need different, you know, an approach.
course.
Different crew members need a different approach. We tend to work with a lot of married couples also. So like we had a married, our second AC and our DIT/assistant editor. They were a married couple. We tend
Save
to
on housing that way.
I want
Yeah,
to talk to you
yeah.
after we watch the film a little bit about this idea of working in a family, because that's a
Oh,
really
sure, yeah.
interesting notion.
absolutely.
We're going to take a look at the trailer for This Is Ours.
You had it all. Perfect job. The family. Second home. Like a house of cards, they're all coming down. We only get one shot on this planet, and you wasted yours. There ain't no reset button. There's no second chances. Every choice you make echoes through the rest of your life. You dug this grave a long time ago. Welcome to regret.
I particularly like how the end of the film does not tie everything up in a neat bow for us. In fact, it's potentially the biggest question
Yeah.
in the film. How did you arrive at that as the ending?
Well, we actually
still disagree.
Yeah. It was actually funny in post, like having arguments with our editor and our sound designer, our colorist, and even between us that it is very open to interpretation.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I think it's brave, and I think it's truthful. And the whole film has a tone of like, look, we're going to take an unflinching look here.
Yeah.
We're not going to tie it up in a neat
Yeah.
Hollywood package. So why would you?
Well, and you nailed it. It's truthful.
Yeah.
Like when we're trying to figure out what's going to happen, what's the
We
truth
don't
of
know.
what will exactly.
there's a lot.
They may
there's-
call in a year, they may not, they
Yep.
may meet someone. We don't know, but I think
Yeah.
that's what sort of is the right ending there.
Yeah.
So, are you saying you had definitive endings that you explored?
I feel like they get back together.
Okay.
So I don't think we always settled on the last shot being the last shot.
That's what it would.
But
Yeah.
we differ on what happens next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like they get back together. I feel like it's not easy, and
Yeah.
they kind of rocky, and they date
And it may
for a
not be
while.
tomorrow.
Oh no!
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. But somewhere down the road that
Yeah.
they get
Yeah.
back together
I
because they
respect-
really do love. Because I love that the last shot is outside the house. They've
Oh, yeah.
shedded that, like they've shedded everything of their previous life, and they're just starting.
Maybe they can look
100%
at each
fresh.
other fresh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And
always
you're not so
picture-
sure.
Well, I mean, I picture, if we were to do like a part two,
Yeah.
it would be maybe 3 years later, they randomly meet at a bookstore or something.
Or there's that party downtown at the firm, and they're like, "Oh, you came? Oh, yeah."
Yeah, exactly. And then they would go out for coffee or drinks or something, and I mean, they would definitely be together at least for a night. But I don't know if it would be a lasting relationship or just like a battery recharge in a way. I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what's kind of thrilling about it.
There's actually a line in Perfect 10 when the character comes home at the end of that film and her husband asks her if she'll ever do it again. Her response is,
she goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that part.
Same thing.
Yeah, we played
I remember the cut to the husband who he's like,
oh, well.
Really?
Yeah, because when we were writing that, it was the same thing. Like, we couldn't figure out a more honest answer. Because to say, no, I'll never do it again is probably what everyone wants to hear, but it's never, is that right? And for this, it was like, there's no way they're going to come out of this thing in an 85-minute movie as being like, well, and now we're good. We're right as rain. You know?
they just said, I mean, in the fight scene, they say some pretty biting. Cut. I mean, it still cuts me to the bone.
What did the actors think?
Oh, they were all along. They thought it was very truthful, but they knew it was going to be hard. Like that, everything that's said, they knew what they were saying was really difficult.
So from Perfect 10 to This Is Ours, and we were chatting about this a little bit before the show, you're working with some of the same cast. I'm going to guess you're working with some of the same crew.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not only about the husband and wife filmmaking team here. You mentioned earlier, we like working with family, extended family in that way.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about coming to that sensibility and why that's so attractive to you.
Well, it's kind of the same thing that we have going for ourselves. When you find people who understand you or can complete your sentences, whether with words or with visuals, that I don't know, you can't buy that. So like when we found, so this was actually the first one that we had worked on with our cinematographer, but he's someone that we want to work with forever because he got it. Like he intuitively knew what we were trying to do with the film and made it look, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like he made it look absolutely gorgeous. And there was not a whole lot of going back and forth, like figuring out how to make it work. He just knew. He just understood.
Sensed it. And probably, I'm going to guess also having him on that location for an extended period, he kind of soaked in the feel of what that life is like and what it should look like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he actually went up early. So he went up before everyone else and shot the sunrise at the cabin.
He in the first AC woke up at like 2 in the morning, drove out to Leavenworth and just, hung out for a day getting all the atmospheric stuff that was in the film. And,
which really set the mood for the whole rest of it. But also, when you're dealing with low budgets, I mean, we both Perfect 10 and This Is Ours were both made for around $40,000. I think we used $40,000 way better in This Is Ours. But you have to have people who are there for a higher purpose, hopefully for the film, and that want to hang out. Because when you're living in a cabin and you're all sleeping on the floor next to one another for 20 days, you better like each other. And this
be people that you want to have fun with.
Because it's hard enough.
Exactly.
So you want to work with the people that you feel like it's a joy to be working with.
Exactly.
So just for a minute, let's go down the technology path because you brought it up. You started talking about the look of the film and it looks great and it does look great and we were just chatting about it before because so much has changed even from Perfect 10. The technology has changed. So you shot this on the Red.
Yes.
And you mentioned that there's now software that allows those of us who work in that medium, which for a long time was very proprietary, and there was a lot of heavy lifting in terms of getting it to talk to other software and hardware.
Absolutely.
But that workflow has been simplified.
Yes.
So for you now, in terms of the digital HD, I don't want to do a Red commercial, but if it's something that you feel like you've arrived at that is comfortable for you, is it something you'll stick with, you think, or are you looking in other areas?
I think, personally, and if I get too nerdy, just throw something at me.
I'm just going to zone out here.
I think every film should be treated with, the choice of technology is different for every film, I think. And even so, going back to Perfect 10 for a minute, like we could have shot that because that was right when DSLRs were coming out, and so we could have done that. But it was actually we did some experimentations with that with some lens adapters, and we ultimately decided on that sort of old look of video with like the sort of unlimited depth of field because we wanted our characters to be in the environment and not be separated from it.
Right.
And This Is Ours, we opted for the 2:40 to 1 widescreen aspect ratio. We
Right.
wanted to get as much shallow depth of field as possible,
Right.
because we wanted our characters to always be like straining the edges of the frame and be distanced from one another. And so that was just
Except for the flashbacks, which
Except for
were
the
shot
flashbacks,
on
yeah.
an HVX with a
Really?
lens adapter with the lens not exactly attached to give like
To
the
give
light
it a, give it a, give it a
coming in
odd,
and hitting the sensor.
feel.
Yep, and
Yeah.
then taking that footage and blowing it up, 350% to get it
To give it that feel,
Yeah,
that-
to give it that grainy sort of. I don't know. We were trying to go for
Romantic
like a
feel.
like a
Yeah.
Kodachrome, like old
Yeah.
Kodachrome look with that. But
Yeah, we actually were making this show, I think, the year after Kodachrome has ceased being manufactured.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
So
Actually,
we've
yeah.
lost that film stock.
Yeah, and actually, film was something that we considered for this project. It was a very brief discussion.
Well, just so our audience understands, because we're in a realm now where they're kind of going like,
Right, yeah.
what's the difference? But what they
Yeah.
can understand is, you said the film cost $40,000.
Yeah.
We're shooting it on the red. Let's talk about what it would have cost on film.
Yeah, a lot more. Like
It would have been a little cheaper in production, but it
But
would have cost a lot more in post-production.
lot
is
more
what
in
we found.
post-production.
Yeah, so the camera rental, and that where the discussion started was that the camera rental was going to be very low cost, but the price of stock and the price of developing that stock is not really that negotiable,
Yeah.
and that would have ended up costing, I think it was like, even at discounted rates, it was something like $40,000 just to get the film processed, let alone buy the
Exactly.
stock.
And
So
then you haven't even edited yet.
yeah,
so.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the choice to shoot it on red was relatively easy. Although one of the things that I love about how we treated the red was that it's a digital sensor. It's very harsh.
Yes.
We get a lot of latitude with it, which is beautiful. But it doesn't match film yet. But we were able to get some relatively old lenses and throw it on there, and that gives it the sort of the softer edges, the more
Right.
maybe classical beauty that hopefully we captured.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, for me, it's like any digital technology that you use, just get some older lenses, and
Yeah.
you're in pretty good shape, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think there's an emotional side to what you choose technology-wise as well, because we actually had a couple days where we had the hard drives of the red
that's- yeah.
failed,
Yeah.
and the cords that connected the hard drives to the red failed. So we had to go to CF cards, which means that we only had at max a 5-minute take.
Yep.
Before we had to dump the CF
Yeah.
card.
Yeah.
So we actually, because it was Labor Day weekend and we were in the middle of nowhere, we had to go with CF cards, or else we're going to
The house
lose
we were at
days.
didn't have an address that we could ship things to.
No.
So we had to have
Yeah.
things shipped to the grocery store. So they were like receiving packages of like red drives
Yeah,
and
yeah,
cables
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
But that made it kind of like a workflow like shooting on film, where we had to be very quick, we had to be very precise
It's
with
like
what
the
our
old days
takes
where
were
we had
going
a
to
clapper
be.
loader.
Exactly.
And the old
Yeah.
days where we had in
Yep.
film is we
Yeah.
had the young guy who was the loader, would run to the
Yeah.
truck,
Yep.
unload the film and the magazines in
Yep.
the bag,
Yeah.
reload and bring the magazine back.
Yeah.
So you're working in that.
Well,
Yeah,
and
the
our
actors knew, like,
crew,
every take has
yeah.
got to be a good take.
And our crew became more efficient, but it did affect actors
Yeah.
a little bit, because it just added an extra layer of stress a
Yeah.
little bit that I felt was coming through a little bit with the performances and how we were choosing performances.
Because they
and
were
that-
conscious of it.
Exactly, they were conscious of it. And so I'm kind of glad that we stuck with our guns and kind of stayed in the digital form, because we had these 4 people and we wanted them to live. We wanted
Yeah.
them to breathe and not be afraid of time, not
Yeah,
be
you
afraid
can't.
of.
You don't want to sit there and go. I have 2,000 feet of film left.
Right.
We have 3 scenes to
Yes.
do.
Yep.
One take each. Let's
Yep,
go.
exactly.
And there's a lot of space in the film.
Yeah.
And I don't think we would have allowed ourselves to have so much space
Yeah.
if we were constantly worried about how much film we were burning.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've looked at Perfect 10. We've had a chance now to talk about This Is Ours. So give us a little glimpse into the future of the Boustedt filmmaking team.
Well, we have 2 shorts in post
Okay.
right now, so those will be coming out, end of the summer, fall.
Great.
And then we're working on our 3rd feature.
We're switching genres. We're
Yes.
going in the action genre.
I love
so
it.
We're taking kind of what we've developed that one of our strong suits is character
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
So we're taking that and putting it into an action package.
And you're writing it together right now.
It's already written.
Oh, it's
Okay.
done.
We're
Yep,
we're
ready to
almost
go.
about to hit pre-production. So
Great.
we're packaging it in LA with our producer, getting some LA talent. We're making it bigger,
Great.
hopefully a much larger budget than 40,000,
Yeah.
and hopefully shooting it this fall.
Absolutely great. We'll look forward to having you back to take a look at
Yes.
it.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here, Kris.
you.
Lindy, it's
Thank
great
you.
to see you again. And thank you for watching Backstory. I'm Andrew Tsao, and I will see you again behind the scenes.